So we're going to talk about, I'm sure everybody, this is the first slide everybody will use when they do an iliac artery intervention, your classification. It looks good on the books. You don't really have to learn it per se, but you should definitely have a good idea to see if there are any what's the degree of disease, like we talked about in the non-invasive part, and trying to define it to see whether it's focal, it is a lesion, it's a CTO, short CTO, bilateral iliac, unilateral iliac, common, external. So always define the anatomy first, because that will actually ascertain what type of management you're actually going to approach. So usually you'll see a task A and a B is usually an endovascular approach, while usually C and D are surgical approaches. But with advancements in technology and good collaboration between vascular surgeons, endovascular specialists, we are leaning towards using even the endovascular approach for TASC C and TASC D lesions as well. Of course, in good hands, experienced hands, you have great results, or you can end up in trouble as well. So always appreciate the lesion, always appreciate the complexity before you decide on what approach you want to take. So just because it's like I said, it's an interventional iliac, I'm just going to give you a background of how it all started with doing just plain on balloon angioplasty versus stent. And like Shreya talked about, it's just mainly the STAG trial, which actually showed it was a randomized trial between angioplasty and plain old balloon stenting, and they actually showed that the angioplasty part of the the stenting part had better results in patency as compared to plain old balloon angioplasty. So that's where it's all started. Same thing happened with the selective stenting part, where we did primary iliac stenting versus transluminal angioplasty stenting with the selective part. And you actually can see the primary patency results down the lane, especially at 48 months. You can see the patency rate between primary stenting versus selectively stenting is pretty much the same. However, the primary stenting keeps the primary patency of the primary stenting is still superior as compared to selective stenting. So that's why, especially more in C and D, the difference is more. I'm breaking things, sorry. C and D, the difference is more obvious as compared to TASC A and TASC B lesions. But what happens when you have CTOs, when you have really occlusive disease? Is endovascular a good option, or surgery still stands there as we speak? So this is one of these comparisons between primary and secondary patency, especially in the completely occlusive lesions. And you can actually see it's better if it's to a surgical arm, except from a technical perspective, it's almost equivalent, especially in the task B and C. But as in how the complexity goes, the patency and the technical success actually starts to go down as compared to the other arms. So here is the follow-up for years, especially at 5 years. You can see the Kaplan-Meier curve. It's pretty much the secondary patency is all the way down to 91%. Talking about TASC D lesions, there was a very good trial published, a paper published by Dr. Suzuki in 2017, which actually had a total of 2,096 patients with aorto-occlusive disease, and they were TASC D versus A and C, and they compared the baseline data, procedures, and follow-up, and they actually found that at 5 years, there was no significant difference in primary patency between the two groups. However, the major adverse events were also similar between the two groups. But the success of the procedure, like I said, is based on the complexity, and that's why it was lower in TASC D group as compared to TASC A and B classification. Open versus endovascular, always an issue like I talked about to begin with, especially in TASC D lesions. There was a very nice trial published from the Houston group, which actually they followed 75 consecutive patients, treated them pretty much equally. I mean, open being 30 and endovascular being 45. And overall, there was significantly higher complications in open group, which because of the increased morbidity and the complexity of the lesions as well. However, you can see that the primary patency and graft patency was still a little bit better in the surgical arm as compared to the endovascular arm. So if anything you have to remember from an iliac intervention, you'll see a lot of these quotes coming up from the Bruvismo registry. It's more of a registry, it's not a trial, but it's a very significant bearing on how you treat lesions, especially in the iliac disease part. So this is one of those important registries where they compare the iliac stenting of A and B and C and D lesions. So what they did is they followed the patient 24 months and they looked for the primary patency rate, which was pretty good. I mean, if you look across the board, I mean, with the task A and B, of course, it's a little bit more, but even task D was not bad, all the way from 88% down to 84.8% for task D lesions. And it actually was treated, they compared with the self-expanding and the balloon expanding stents. The self-expanding stents, like Shreya mentioned, the data is very convincing for self-expanding stents as compared to balloon expanding stents. But you always have to realize every stent has its own niche depending on how the lesion is, self-expanding, balloon expanding, covered, uncovered. So just because the trial says self-expanding is better, but not, you have to still be picky, and every case is its own case in itself. So, but this is some good data. If you have an option, self-expanding definitely works better in balloon expanding, especially proved by this registry part of it, irrespective of the task lesions. And this is, again, the ICE trial, which Shreya was mentioning about, comparing occlusive disease, self-expanding, balloon expanding, works better as compared to the balloon expanding stent. This, I'm sure everybody has heard about the COBIS trial, which is pretty much using a covered stent, covered balloon expandable stents, as compared to bare metal stents, especially in calcified lesions. And you can see the graph, actually, if you follow them all the way down 2 years, you can actually see the difference between the two curves is pretty significant, especially in favor of the covered stents as compared to balloon expandable stent. Now, data is good, everything is great, but eventually patient is what you are focused on, and that's where you want to treat them for. So always, we always follow guidelines as one of the recommendations for treating patients, especially here. So you can actually see that it's actually a level A recommendation to treat iliac disease, especially by stenting procedure. And this is one of the appropriateness criteria for treating patients who have mild symptoms, claudication, and especially critical limb ischemia. So if you have mild symptoms, then your stenting is appropriate if it's more than 50% lesion, and there is definitely a significant disease as well. As you go for the claudication part of it, again, common iliac disease, stenting of the distal aorta abdominal is appropriate. So giving the score of almost 9. So, they have the scoring system nowadays, which you have to really follow, so the green being the appropriate part. And if you have a lesion, like Dan was talking about earlier, the gradient is also significant. On ultrasound, like you said, velocity more than 200 meters per second. But when you're doing an invasive angiographic workup, a gradient is also one of the parameters in treating this iliac disease. So if it looks bad, but the gradient is not that bad, big vessels, we really don't want to touch them, because you'll realize iliac interventions, subclavian interventions, all these bigger vessels, is more about getting the gradient off. So if it's not significant, that means it really doesn't explain your symptoms, even though it might look a little bit bad. Especially critical limb ischemia, of course, it is definitely justified in using these the gradient workup. Now, talking about treatment, you'll have multiple options. You have PTAs, you have bare metal stents for focal lesions, for CTO lesions, for covered and everything. So you can see the top half is where it's actually appropriate: PTA, bare metal stenting, covered stent, for CTOs, for diffuse disease as well. It's all appropriate. But as you start going down, it actually becomes less appropriate. Hold on, let me go. Yeah. Sorry. So again, the same thing about talking about appropriateness, whether when there is a severe disease of more than 70%, you have to use stenting. Of course, all the lesion characteristics warrant a stent. Covered stent versus bare metal stent, that's depending on the lesion characteristics per se. CTOs, covered stents are supposed to be appropriate. Bare metal stents are mainly focal and diffuse. PTS alone, essentially, is not really approved for using treatment of the disease of iliac stuff. DCB is still, I know we use a lot of DCB nowadays, especially in the SFA. The iliac data is still in the realm. It's not really used a DCB. First of all is the availability of sizing. Second of all is the data on iliac stenting as well. So it's sometimes approved, but not like really appropriate for using them. Looking at just the SCAI guidelines for device selections for aortic intervention, I know it's a complex slide, but just look at the green stuff. Most of the time you'll see is the red and the pink color, which is like sometimes appropriate versus rarely. The dark red is like rarely appropriate. So atherectomy, technically per the guidelines, I know there is one of those devices which is approved for atherectomy of iliacs. We'll talk about later, but based on purely on guidelines as of now, the atherectomy is not indicated, or it's rarely appropriate, I would say, in using the iliac disease. So it's mainly using our stenting, and PTA is the treatment of choice in all the iliac diseases, and these are various permutation and combinations for you to look at. So I guess my time is over. Tips and tricks, Shreya already talked about it. So we use DSAs, AP views, contralateral views, very important, like anything. Orthogonal views is important to define your external, internal, especially when you're trying to do the bifurcation stenting or trying to land it. Knowing your anatomy, it sounds very basic, but it's very, very crucial, especially when you're doing these iliac interventions, your CTO interventions. You want to see what's happening with the internal, or let's say if you have a distal aortic aneurysm with iliac disease. So you have to know your feeder vessels for your aneurysm treatment. So, and knowing the anatomy is principal in treating them. This all, she talked about 6 French, 7 French, different views, axes. Usually we recommend you can do on 6 French. It's not an issue, but there's technicalities. Sometimes when you inject, especially you have a balloon or a stent to appropriately park or land at, it just becomes harder. So recommend 7 French, 035, 014 systems. Balloon angioplasty, just to learn, we try to undersize first, so go slow. Just do a smaller size balloon angioplasty to get an idea of how well your lesion expands. Is it very calcified? Then you can slowly grade your balloon up, because the last thing you want is go 1:1 and to have a perforation right there and there. You can upsize your balloon, get another size, start with a lower diameter and go up, but it's always a good idea to have a slow upgrade of your iliac, sequential balloon inflation. Cutting balloons, scoring balloons are mainly for ISRs. Lithotripsy, she gave you the data, so I'm not going to talk about it. It's the in-fashion thing, and it really works well. Especially a lot of people, when you'll be doing TAVR with significant disease, the vascular surgeons, we have a very good collaboration, and they are with us in the room. So if we have to treat an iliac before we take our big sheets up, we actually do lithotripsy, PTA, and then we do stenting on our way out. So this is one of the important modalities that are coming up, especially when the structural armamentarium adds on to the complexity of the case as well. So I guess I'm going to self and balloon. She talked about it again. Different lesions, different scenarios. Self-expanding, non-covered is non-osteal lesions, non-severely calcified lesions, especially around the branches, because it's an open cell design. So these are some of the stents which are available in the market. Balloon expanding stent, non-covered, again, precise placement. If you're right at the ostium, common iliac, for better deployment, better control. Sometimes self-expanding, remember it's a nitinol self-expanding, so it can move up and down. So you have to really make sure if you're parking right at the spot you want to park, then you have to use your balloon expandable stents. Covered stents, like we talked about, usually used in moderate to severe calcification. Try to stay away from the branches. If you have to occlude, you have to, but we try to stay away from the branches. But in those, especially using covered stents, you have to be cognizant about the sheet size. You know, we're in a rush, God forbid there's a perforation, you have a 7 French system, you want to use an 8-59 long covered stent. Most of this won't go to a 7 French system, especially bigger sizes or even smaller size with bigger length. You have always in your lab, whenever you're doing iliac intervention, any intervention, be cognizant about your stenting. So I guess in summary, endovascular iliac interventions actually is growing in popularity, but like I said, you have to have a good non-invasive workup, work with your vascular surgeons, know your limitations, know the disease, and then we can actually also do C&D lesions. Safety-wise, heparin is preferred over Angiomax for anticoagulation for reversibility. Various stents are available in different forms, sizes, formats, and structures for a favorable long-term outcome. And alternate stent strategy, which I was going to talk about, is pedal access and radial access, is now up and coming. It is shown to be viable in these selective studies, but there's no real randomized trial to work on it. But as of now, iliac disease is good fun to do it, but in good hands and experienced stuff, it works out great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.